Good morning, everyone. We're just getting things set up in the background. Good morning, everyone. We're just going to be minutes. I'm going to request all the panelists to keep their mics on mute for the time being. right. Good morning, everyone. Can I just do a quick check? All the panelists, can you hear me clearly? Yeah, just give me a thumbs up if you can. Brilliant. Thank you so much. We've got quite a few people joining us on Zoom and on our website on YouTube. But I think we'll kick off. It's just gone past 11:30. So just a quick introduction. So anybody who has joined in on our Zoom, you should see at the bottom of your screens, there is a Q&A icon, and you can use that. If you click on it, and you can submit a question using that icon, and then we will receive it and we will try and cover as many questions as we can during this webinar. We'll try and restrict it to one question per person initially, just to make sure that we're giving enough coverage to as many people as possible. So that's how we will work it. So the format is going to be a quick introduction to the panelist, followed by a little bit of a presentation, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So firstly, can I request Bhavni to start the webinar with Namuni and Tarnam, please.
Janendra, pranam. Om Namo Hriyantaram, Om Namo Sitaram, Om Namo Ayariyanam, Om Namo Vajayanam, Namo Loye Savasavanam, Eso Panchanamo Karo, Sava Pava Panasano, Mangalarancha Savesim, Paramam Have Mangalam, Paramam Have Mangalam.
Thank you so much. Can I ask Nilesh Bhai to say a quick few words?
Jai Jinendra and Pranam Badane. Welcome all of you for today's webinar. It's a lovely Sunday afternoon. I hope sun is shining at your end. Here it is anyway. So let's kick off with this very important topic about the support which the government will be giving to us for many of our businesses. Coronavirus had a very big impact, I think, throughout the world, mentally and physically, to many of us, health-wise as well as businesses. So today's topic is very relevant for many of our businesses who have been impaired and impacted with this virus. Let us all be positive, and I'm sure we'll all come out of it. And very important, the PM's message: stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives. Social Association of UK has set up a team to help the vulnerable and elderly people. And we have so far received many requests, and we have fulfilled all of these requests. The details of this are on our website. So those who want our assistance, please go to our website. There's an email as well as our phone number, and please do not be shy and come forward for any assistance we can provide to all these elderly and vulnerable people. As you know, NHS has been working very, very hard to keep the nation alive. And to say a big, big thank you, I think we salute them and say a big thank you by Social Association of UK, has in collaboration with Dips Food and DNS Accountants, have joined together to set up a project whereby we have been delivering hot meals and snacks to many hospitals today in London. This has been going on for the past few weeks, and it's been going on, and we are still going to continue with this project to give them the nourishment and the energy to keep the nation alive. And in order to continue for this project, Osho Association of UK has set up a Seva fund. The details are on our website. Many donors came forward. We say a thank you to all these donors who have contributed towards the fund. And those who wish to please come and support us for this Seva fund, please do visit our website. And there is a Seva fund donation page on there, as well as you can send your checks to our centers with your name and address whenever you are able to do so, and give us a support for these things. So thank you to all the donors once again. There are many online events to entertain and keep you occupied. So do visit our website, and hopefully this will keep you quite amused and also occupy yourself during these lockdown situations and other things. Today, we have 3 of our members, Hitesh Bhai, Shailesh Bhai, and Sumitra Ben, who has volunteered today to come forward and give us the insight of this support which will be happening. And without further ado, I ask Paresh Bhai to introduce these 3 professionals who have come today forward and helped us to set up this webinar. So thank you, Paresh Bhai, on to you.
Thank you, Nilesh Bhai. Jai Jinendra, everyone. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. My name is Paresh. As Nilesh Bhai said, I'm South Area Chair, and it gives me a great pleasure to introduce to you a leading firm of accountants, not in just South, but I think across the country. And they've come forward to provide some help and assistance in the current situation we face. So introduce you to Flemings, Hitesh Bhai, Sumi Ben, Shailesh Bhai, and Hanish Bhai, who will go through a short presentation with you and then hopefully ask your questions. This pandemic has affected every one of us in some way or another. So today's webinars hopefully will demystify some of the government initiatives that have been published, but people don't understand them. So hopefully today your questions will be answered. So can I pass you across to now to Hitesh Bhai and introduce you to Flemings.
For an overview, Shailesh will kick it off with an overview. Sumi will cover a few things, Hanish will cover a few things, I will cover a few things, and then we'll go to Q&A. So over to Shailesh.
Thank you, Hitesh. Jai Jinendra, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for attending today's webinar, which will talk about the government's assistance that is available for businesses and individuals because of the current coronavirus pandemic. If I go through, before we start the webinar, I need to go through the first disclaimer that we have set up on the screen. As you know, the contents of this webinar is correct at the current date. This pandemic has struck very suddenly, and the government has been trying to grapple with it and has been putting in rules, and those rules are changing regularly. So at the moment, you know, these are the information we have currently, and it may change. Also, you know, when you make any decisions, you know, please do not rely on this webinar, and you need to really look at your own situation and see how, you know, that will affect your decision making. And we would also ask that you take professional advice before embarking on any action. So let me move on to the next slide. So today's webinar will give an overview of the current government help that is available for employers, employees, the self-employed, and there are numerous amongst us who are self-employed, and businesses. So you know, hopefully this will be very appropriate to the attendees. So before I invite Sumi to start the presentation, we just wanted a feel from the audience into which category they fit into, and whether they are an employer, employee, self-employed, or running a small business. I mean, you may fit into a number of those. So again, it will be useful to get that feel from the attendees. Okay, let me pass you on to Sumi, who is one of our partners at Fleming. So over to you. And can please everybody vote on this, which category you fit into.
Okay, so a very good morning to everybody, and thank you for joining us on this webinar. Today, so I'm going to talk to you about the government help that's available for employers and employees. Our Chancellor has been very, very generous in terms of how they can help businesses and to keep them going. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme. The objective of this scheme is to help businesses continue retaining their staff during the lockdown. So the government has introduced a scheme of furloughing, and furloughing means that you retain the staff, and even if there isn't any work, you continue retaining them and paying them. The eligibility is for all employers, and your staff must have been on the payroll as at 19th of March 2020. The government will pay a grant, not a loan, a grant, which is the lower of 80% of an employee's regular wage up to a maximum of 2,500. Plus, on top of that, the government will also repay the employer's NIC contributions, and if your employee is auto-enrolled for pension contributions, then the government will pay the auto-enrollment charge in relation to the 80% or the 2,500 that you would be paying to your employee. The furlough period, there is a rule, it has to be for a minimum of 3 weeks and up to 3 months. And it can be extended if necessary. Now, with the way the lockdown is going, we don't know how long this will be for. It can be backdated to the 1st of March 2020. So even though we went into lockdown on the 23rd of March, we can actually backdate the furlough period to the 1st of March 2020. You can also take furloughed staff off furlough and then put them back on, so long as the furlough period is for a minimum of 3 weeks. So, for example, an accounting firm like ours, we've furloughed a few staff because there wasn't enough work for them to be doing. But now, as we approach the end of the month, we may receive some client records, and we will take some of our furloughed staff off furlough for a period of 2 or 3 weeks, allow them to do some work, and then put them back on furlough. And remember, it has to be for a minimum of 3 weeks that you furlough staff. It is up to you as the employer to decide whether you pay your staff just the 80%, which you can then reclaim, and up to a maximum of 2,500, or you pay them the full normal wage. But remember, you can only reclaim 80%. And this is, of course, subject to agreement by the employee and their contract of employment. The whole process, it's very simple. You identify the staff that you wish to furlough. In this identification, you must ensure that there is no element of discrimination, because that could give rise to some action from your employees. So you have to make sure that you demonstrate fairness in who you identify in terms of who you wish to furlough. Discuss and agree your intentions with the staff that you are going to furlough, and then issue them with a furlough letter. Now, the ACAS website has some very good templates, and I have a link at the end of this presentation that you can go to. It gives you the skeleton of the details that you should include in your letter, and then you can adapt it in whichever way you wish to in terms of how you communicate with your staff. One of the key things is that furloughed staff should not do any work for you in that role during the furlough period. So what if your employee does not agree to the furlough terms? You would need to change the terms of their contract. And if that doesn't work, then you must seek legal advice if this situation arises. In terms of record keeping, you must keep records of your furloughed employees. I think it's for a minimum of 5 years in terms of the agreement that, signed agreement that you should have received back from your employees. You process your payroll in the normal way, and you submit your payroll data through the RTI. Then you calculate the amount you are eligible for. Again, there's a link at the end of this presentation in terms of how you calculate it. The grant needs to be claimed through a new online portal, and the HMRC has planned for it to go live from tomorrow. So you should have received an email from HMRC informing you of this if you are a registered employer. Big question everybody's asking, what happens if I don't have a cash flow to pay my staff? There is a lot of talk about the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme, which Hitesh will go through a little later in this presentation. That's one thing, that's one option, or you can agree with your affected staff that you will pay them when you receive the grant. Now, according to the HMRC correspondence that we've been receiving, the grant should come through within 6 working days. So if your employees can wait until then hopefully you will be able to pay them within 6 working days of making your claim. What if you'd made your staff redundant before the scheme was announced? So you can re-employ someone who was made redundant or stopped working on or after the 28th of February, and then you can put them on furlough. So this is quite important, because the last thing you want, if you've made people redundant and then you go back to work after the lockdown, you won't have those staff. So if you really do want them to come back, then here's an important way of getting them back onto your books and to retaining them so that they're available when we all go back to normality. The next thing that the Chancellor has offered businesses is the ability to claim back statutory sick pay from day 1 of a coronavirus illness. So currently, if somebody's ill, you can only reclaim the SSP from day 4, or you can pay the SSP from day 4. So if any of your employees are ill because of coronavirus, you can pay them SSP from day 1 up to 14 days of their illness. And this is effective from the 13th of March. And you can actually reclaim this as well. So you would be able to receive this back from the government. This is payable, SSP is payable for up to 14 days if an employee is unable to work because they either have the illness or they cannot work because they are self-isolating at home. Employees don't need to provide a fit note because you're not allowed to go to the GP. but they should be able to download an isolation note from the NHS website. Now, some of our staff were not aware of this, and they were not able to download this isolation note because they only realized afterwards. So what we've asked them to do is to just submit to us a letter informing us that they were ill because of this and the period that they were ill for. So we should be able to use that as evidence that they were ill through coronavirus. The HMRC portal is not yet available for us to be able to reclaim the SSP, but I'm sure it'll be announced shortly, and there'll be guidance on how you can do that as well. Okay, I will hand over now to Hanish, who will talk to you about self-employed, help available for self-employed people and also for businesses.
Next slide.
Okay.
Hanish.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Thank you, Sumi, for the explanation on the CGRS, which was quite important as if you are an employee. Now, as far as self-employed are concerned, this has been some time since the government kind of introduced it after thinking quite a long time of how to introduce it because they were not sure about it. So the scheme is called Self-Employed Income Support Scheme. The scheme will allow you to claim a grant, a taxable grant worth 80% of your trading profits, up to a maximum of 2,500. And this is for 3 months at the moment, but it could be extended, same as what they're doing for the CGRS. So at the moment, it's available for the month of March, April, and May 20. So the maximum for those 3 months comes to 7,500. Now, to be eligible for the scheme, they've set up certain criteria. Not everyone is eligible. And this criteria, how they have gone about getting it, we don't know, but this is the criteria at the moment. It's open to all self-employed individuals with a trading profit of less than £50,000. So if you're above £50,000, even £1,000 more, this scheme doesn't apply to you. And the £50,000 profit should be for the tax year 2018-19. Or if you don't meet that criteria, you can go back and look at the last 3 tax years, which is 2016, 17, 2017, 18, and 2018, 19, and average your self-employment profits for those 3 years. If these are less than £50,000, then you are eligible for this scheme. However, this is quite important because many of you might have other income. So under this eligibility, more than half of your income should be from self-employment. So if it's 40% of your total income from self-employment, you won't be eligible for this. If it's more than 50%, you will be. So it's quite important because many of us have other income like rental income or dividend income, etc. So this is just to watch out. There are other criteria which you must meet also. You must have submitted your 18-19 tax return by now, which was due by 31st January of this year. If you haven't, the government has given you time to submit it by 23rd of April. So you don't have much time. If you haven't done it, I think it's time for you to kind of submit your 18-19 tax return. Again, you must have traded during the tax year 2019 to 2020. And when you are applying for this eligibility for this scheme, you must be also trading during that period. Unless you're affected by coronavirus while you can't trade, and therefore then you will still be eligible. And the last point is you also need to be, you should have an intention to trade during the coming tax year, which is 2021, which is the current tax year. So there are quite a few pointers in this eligibility which you have to meet to kind of qualify for this scheme. And of course, you have to demonstrate that you have lost income due to COVID-19. If you haven't lost, then this won't apply to you. Now, what is a little bit where people are lobbying about is where you have just started your self-employment in the current tax year, 1920. If you have started your self-employment in that period, then you're not eligible for it. However, the many people lobbying for this, same as the CJRS, they extended it to 19th of March. You have to wait for this space to see, they might change this. So very recent self-employed people could get into the scheme. We are not sure at the moment. How do you claim for this grant? You can't claim at the moment. If you are eligible, the HMRC will speak to you or come back to you. How will they do that? They will look at your 18-19 tax return to see whether you're eligible or not. So they will look at that data they have, and any potential people who can claim, they will be writing to them. We expect them to write to the people affected by mid-May 2020. And when they do write to you, they will give you instructions of how to apply. And it will be an online system where you apply. Now, during your application, they will ask you questions to make sure you're eligible. So you need to be quite ready with your answers to those, especially whether you have lost income due to COVID-19, you probably have to demonstrate it. We don't know what sort of questions will come up, but it's something you need to watch out for. And the grants will be paid in one lump sum. So they won't come monthly, but they will be paid in one lump sum for the three months, sometime at the beginning of June. So you have to wait for that period in between. Now, the other thing what the government has done is give some leeway in terms of paying your July 2020 tax installment. So many of you might be in this position that they have to pay the 31st July installment. And if you do not have the money, then you can defer it to January 2021. Mind you, it's a deferral. It's not they're canceling your liability. And this deferral is automatic. There'll be no penalties or interest payable on that deferral of that payment. So if you don't have the cash flow at the moment, it's an opportunity to kind of defer it to 31st January 2021. However, in January 2021, there'll be quite a lot of tax then to pay. You'll have to pay your balancing payment, your advance payment, and this deferred tax. So cash flow could become an issue at that point in time. So you have to think about it. Now for UK businesses, and this is just for UK registered businesses, where they register for VAT, the government has given some leeway in terms of paying the VAT. So if your VAT payable is due anytime between 20th of March and 30th of June 2020, then you can defer it up till 31st March 2021. This is again a deferral, it's not a cancellation of liability. So you need to take that point in also. If you do want to defer it and you're paying your VAT by direct debit, then you must cancel the direct debit. Otherwise, the government is going to take the money from your bank account. So it is imperative that you cancel your direct debit as soon as you can. During this period, although you might want to defer your VAT, you must file your VAT returns on time by the normal due dates. That is a must. Defer is a different issue, but you must complete your VAT returns on time by the due dates. The HMRC also have given some leeway in terms of when to pay your tax liabilities. It's called time to pay. So businesses and self-employed people who are in financial distress and have outstanding liabilities and they cannot pay these liabilities, the HMRC will give them some sort of support through the time to pay service. Now, if you want this service, then you need to call the HMRC yourself or through your agent or your professional advisor. The number is on the slide. They have also taken out a new number, which is, I think, which is a faster way to kind of get to them. At the moment, I don't have that number. And the HMRC will ask you specific questions as to why you can't pay. You have to demonstrate that. They will probably want to look at your cash flow and your projections and then make a decision with you on a case-by-case basis on how you can then pay by installments or when you can pay. Again, if there's a debt collection levied on you, that at the moment, all debt collections are being discontinued for the time being. Also, penalties and interest during this period are going to be cancelled. But you have to contact the HMRC for deferring your payment. That is quite important. You can't just defer it and not contact the HMRC about it. So it's important you speak to the HMRC on that. Again, what I said, I think in terms of negotiating your installment payments or when to pay, it would be good for you to negotiate it with the HMRC on the best possible way. And you might have to take advice on this from your accountant or your professional advisor. Many of us have family-owned businesses, and where yourself and your family are within the business, either as directors, shareholders, or just employees of that company. Now, for various reasons, you might have done your tax planning where you're paying yourself a minimum salary up to the NI level, because that doesn't attract any NIC to pay at that kind of level. And the balance of the monies you then require, you're taking it out as a dividend. Now, you can follow yourself. Being a director, you can follow yourself. That means you then don't do any work for the company. You can only do director kind of responsibilities like filing your accounts or other statutory duties you have responsibility for, but you can't do any revenue generating work during that period if you want to follow yourself. The issue here is because you have taken out a small salary, your follow or your grant will be based on the salary you've taken out, which if it's up to the NI level at the moment, people are taking out up to 8,628. So the CJRS or the grant on that won't be applicable to the dividends you have taken out. But there is something you can get out if you're in difficulties due to this coronavirus. Hitesh, over to you in terms of explaining for the small businesses and generally about other businesses. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Hanish, Jai Jinendra, and Pranam to everybody again. Government has also gone on to give relief for the rates. Here, what is important to receive the rate relief is that you actually own a property that is in your name, or you're renting a property which is in your name. So what they've announced is for retail, hospitality, and leisure sectors in England for 2021 tax year, because most of these retail, hospitality, leisure sectors have been asked to close. Therefore, there is 100% relief from business rates. It will be administered by the local authority, so you don't need to do anything. And you will receive a bill showing no business rates are chargeable for 2021. The eligibility is that you are trading in a shop, restaurant, cafe, bar, pubs, cinema or live music venues, assembly or leisure properties, hospitality properties such as hotels, bed and breakfast, and children's nursery. Now, this is on direct instruction of the government to not run these businesses, and therefore the rate relief will be available to you. What is the relief? Well, it is a cash grant, and depending on how much rates you pay, if the rateable value of the property is less than 15,000, then the business is eligible for a cash grant of £10,000. If the rateable value of the property is between 15 and 51,000, then the cash grant given will be 25,000. And this will be administered by the local authority. You don't need to apply for it. The local authority will automatically, what they've got on their records, will then send these to amounts. Unfortunately, if your rateable value is over 51,000, you're not eligible for anything. In addition to what Sumi and Hanish has covered and the grants, the government has announced number of loans that are available at favorable rates. Now, the Chancellor mentioned they will do whatever it takes to make sure that the businesses survive and jobs are protected. And they announced a package of £330 million, and it's called the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme. It will help businesses affected to access bank lending and overdrafts if they need to, loans up to 5 million, and the government will provide a guarantee of 80% of that loan. Now, there's a lot of controversy, and so far, only £1 billion has been drawn. Watching the news this morning, Michael Gove, in addition to the Bank of England governor, have considered whether the government will guarantee 100% of the loan. So what is available is you will get interest free for the first 12 months. And in addition to the fees that are normally paid to the bank, that will be waived. So the government will make a business interruption payment to cover the first 12 months of the interest and any lender levied fees. And therefore, small businesses will benefit initially. Most of these loans are intended for 6 years. From year 2 to 6, it will be normal commercial rates that you've agreed with the bank. The idea is to get you through this short period of up to a year. That kind of gives you an overview of what the government is offering. There are lots of issues where people have not benefited, particularly buy-to-let landlords. There's no relief available if your tenant doesn't pay any of the rent. Even for businesses, landlords who own commercial properties, a lot of the tenants have not paid their rents. There's no relief for that. For tenants, again, there is no relief as the government has intended. Rent could be one of your significant factors, but there's no relief. What we'd like to do now is take some questions through the team, and we'll try and answer as best as we can. So over to Paresh and Bhavani.
Hi, Hitesh. Thank you very much. There's a few questions.
Sorry, Paresh, right? Sorry, Paresh, just to interrupt. Hitesh, thank you so much. Can I request you to stop sharing your screen so we can get the panel
Okay.
together? Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, sorry, go on, Paresh.
Yeah, so one of the questions is what happened with directors of SMEs who do not draw a salary but solely survive on dividends and with the current situation if the business is affected?
Okay, we can ask Sailesh to step in.
Unmute.
Sailesh, you need to unmute.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Hitesh and Paresh. I think this question was answered by Hanish in an earlier slide, because what the rule is, and it may sound very unfair, is that what the government is covering is the salaries that are paid by the company to any individual, be it a director or any of the employees. And if those people are furloughed, then it will only be based on the salary that is paid, and the dividends don't come into account at all. So it is very unfair from the business director's point of view, but that's the position at the moment. Whether the government will consider that in due course, we don't know.
Okay, question number 2.
Thank you, Sailesh Bhai. Question number 2 from Chetan. Are employee pay grants taxable when received into a limited company from HMRC?
Hanish, perhaps do you want to fill that one? Hanish,
Unmute.
you need to unmute. That's it.
Yeah, just pressing the wrong button, sorry. Just the previous question, just to add one more thing, I think that question has a reason because of personal service companies. Many of them will be affected. These are mainly the contractors. So like what Sailesh said, yeah, it's only the salary at the moment for which you can claim, just to add a little bit on that. But as far as the grants are concerned, any grants you receive, whether you are self-employed or a limited company, these will be taxable grants. So you will show it as your income in your accounts. Where you show it depends on the use is for, but it is taxable. So for a limited company, corporation tax will be payable on it. For self-employed, it's income, and therefore tax and NIC will also be payable on it. So you just have to bear that in mind.
Okay, third question.
Just 2 questions from the same lady. So first question from her is, will my tax advisor be able to make application on my behalf? And the second part question is, I was under the impression that directors of small businesses can be furloughed and can work for a business to build it up, as otherwise the business would just die.
Okay, back to Sailesh.
Okay, hi, thanks, Hitesh. So it depends because there are various measures of help. So if it's to do with rates, it's automatic, as Hitesh and Hanish mentioned. If it's to do with deferring the tax, again, that you have to do because you may want to pay that. But in terms of, say, furloughing staff and the payments you have to make, again, that will happen through the website that you use to do your RTR filing. And the revenue will work that out and will be offset against those payments that you have to make every month or every quarter. So I think that was one of the points. Paresh, what was the other point the lady mentioned?
So I think, I'm not sure, so first question is, will the tax advisor be able to make the application on her behalf? Is that, you've answered that? Yeah?
Yeah, so say the tax advisor is doing the payroll for those individuals, of course they'll be able to do that. And we will do that for our clients. And so it is flexible because individuals won't be aware of the nitty-gritties of this. So I think, it is right that the agent is allowed to do these claims on behalf of the client.
So, and the second was the the directors, can they be furloughed and still continue to work? Otherwise, the business would die.
I think on that, the rule, as we understand it at the moment, is that you can't work for that business, but you can carry on what are essential director duties. So for instance, if you got a sole company, you can do the basic duties a director is required, but you can't then continue doing work which will generate revenue. However, if you've got multiple businesses, you can still carry on with other businesses. Whilst the business you've been furloughed, you can't do anything else. Sumi, Hanish, Sailesh, you want to add anything to that?
I think one point I would make is that, you know, again, Sumi talked earlier in the presentation about furloughing for a minimum period of 3 weeks. So say, you know, you furlough yourself for 3 weeks and there's no work that you can do in that time, which is revenue generating. But what you can do is that after those 3 weeks, you can come back and start working for your business, for which you won't receive any grant or any assistance, but at least then you are keeping your business going. So it will all depend on your individual circumstances.
Sumi, do you want to add?
Yeah, just
yeah,
just to add on to what Sailesh is saying, first of all, the key point is that they shouldn't be generating any revenue for their business, and they should just be doing their normal director duties. They can furlough in and out if they need to. So furlough for 3 weeks, come back in, do some work, and then furlough again.
Okay, all right, next question.
Thank you. This is another one about furloughing. It's quite a long one, but they currently work for a business that is open, and they have health conditions which result in them sometimes going to the hospital. They don't fall under the over 70 or anybody with underlying health conditions, but they live with a grandchild who is at risk with respiratory infections. Their daughter has been furloughed for parental duties, and they're just wondering whether they can be furloughed.
Sumi?
That's an interesting one. If the employer feels that this person, it's not safe for that person to come into work, then I would expect that, yes, they can be furloughed. I guess it depends on how suitable they are to be able to go to work.
And also, I think the government has said if you're shielding somebody, taking care of elderly or whatever, then it's a question of having a discussion with the employer to say, look, this is the situation. Because the whole purpose of all these schemes is not to spread the virus. So the idea is if you're in a vulnerable situation, you're working and then you go home and you're going to spread it in your household, they want to prevent that. So the advice we would give is have a word with your employer to say, I've got people in the household who are vulnerable, the child, and therefore I may not be able to come into work. Can I be furloughed?
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think that is absolutely right. That, you know, really the primary government advice is that, look, especially for the elderly, and these parents will fall into that category, is to say, look, stay at home, because they are probably the most vulnerable because of their age. And I think having a sensible discussion with the employer will mean that the employer will probably agree to furlough them. Unless the work is of such importance that they can work from home. So it will very much depend on the individual discussions with their employees.
Great, thank you. Very sensible advice. I'm just going to pass over to Ashish because we've had a few questions coming in through our website as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Barney. I've got a very sort of similar question in the similar line. So the question is, from somebody who's working for a legal firm as a legal cashier, and they basically have to ask their boss every day to come in. They won't be allowed to work from home, and they're wondering whether they can actually do anything or take any action because they're not being allowed to work from home.
Again, I think it's a question whether, first of all, it's an essential job, because the government has classified some jobs as essential, particularly in the NHS and pharmacies, where they seem to be in the front line helping people deal with this disease. Now, if it's a legal cashier and the employer is asking them to come in, it may be because the records and the systems and all that are at the business, and they may be monies transferring, etc. Now, the government has actually advised this is non-essential. If it can't be done from home, then a discussion between employer and employee to say, will you furlough me? That will help. Now, also one of the main purposes of the government is to stop people traveling on public transport, where they see you could spare. Now, if you're living around the corner and it's a 2-minute walk, and you can go into the office and there's hardly anybody in the office and they've done social distancing measures, then the employer and employee has to decide, is it right without putting anybody at risk of catching or spreading this disease? And at the moment, the government's mindset is, look, if you don't need to do it, don't do it. Just stay at home, be safe for another 2-3 weeks, and see whether we can get over it. Now, whether the government will bring in testing measures, which they're trying to, and then you go for a test, if you don't have it, then you may be able to return back sensibly. So I think it's unfolding as we speak. The testing in the country is still very low. Nobody would know where to go until all that gets to their target of 100,000 testing a day, and you're able to have the test very quickly. Until then, the advice would be, if you feel at risk, have a discussion with your employer.
I think also that there is a link further down on our presentation. If the employer does want employees to go in, then they have to take certain steps to ensure the safety and hygiene of the environment that their staff are working in, to make sure that infections aren't spread. So, washing hands, availability of hand sanitizers, cleaning equipment, etc. So if the employer wants their staff to go in, then they have to make sure that these measures are in place as well.
Great, thank you. I think the focus is really to have a very good sort of conversation with the employer and employees to see what would be the best route forward. Brilliant, thank you. Paresh, do you want to take a few more?
Yeah, thanks, Ashish. A couple of questions have come by WhatsApp and text. Schools and colleges, they have to pay business rates.
Yes, I think, again, under the government initiative, if it's a public body, if it's a government school, the local authorities will deal with that. But if it's a private college, they would fall under the definition of retail, leisure, and hospitality. Now, I think, again, there's further guidance, we'll need to look it up, but I think business colleges would probably qualify for business rates.
Thanks, Hitesh. The other question has arrived by text. They're watching, but I think they can't ask questions. While being furloughed, can I still look for a job?
That's cheeky. No, not really, because the whole purpose what the government is saying, we want to protect employment. And, they're telling employers, look, this is for the very first time in the history of United Kingdom, that they're paying 80% of private sector wages. It's unheard of. And it is to support employers not to push everybody onto the unemployment queue. It is to ensure that you keep your staff, and when situation gets better, that you've got the ready trained skills that you need with your existing staff. Now, if somebody has been furloughed, they're getting 80% up to a maximum of 2,500. Now, if you are a super high earner and you get furloughed and you think possibly, this business may not survive, then sure, you can think beyond what will I do after if the business does not survive. But I think it's cheeky to be furloughed to get 80% pay, and most employers in fairness are going to pay 100% of whatever the salary is, up to a maximum of 2,500. Few employers who are in desperate trouble may only go up to 80%. So we would say possibly wait until the event happens. If they then made redundant or asked to leave or whatever, it's at that time you'd start looking for a job. Now, in any case, the job market is non-existent at the moment. People are not interviewing, nobody's moving around, etc. You could do a online interview, but that's very different. So we are also aware that the job market is flat at the moment, as is the housing market. Shailesh, Anish, Sumi, anything else to add?
Hitesh, I think, sorry, just on that, it may be that that person is probably having difficulties with the company, i.e. maybe they're about to lose their job. I think, is it feasible? I think, is it legal?
Yeah. If that is the case, if they have doubts whether the company or the employer will survive, and once they've been paid, I don't think they're prevented in doing anything else. What they can't do the work for the employer, but they're not prevented in doing anything else. In fact, the funny thing is, they could do other work. Say if they had 2 employments, for example, and they're furloughed in one, they could still continue doing the other one and still get the pay from the first employer. Okay, so the situation is very difficult, and it's understandable if people think, well, my employer may not survive, I better start looking for a job. Then nothing is preventing them doing that. Okay, but again, the government and the employer are investing in this furlough scheme to say, look, we'll still keep you on the payroll. There could be a 20% cost by the employer. Most employers may stomach it, on the basis that you will come back when this horrible phase is over. Yeah, Sumi, anything to add? No? Okay.
There's a few more on the Q&A. Do the employers have to submit a monthly claim under the coronavirus job retention scheme, and how often can the claim be made? i.e. claim for March 2020 and then April and May made in one go, or does it have to be done monthly?
Is this the furlough claim?
It doesn't say. It says talking about employers and how often can they make a CJRS claim.
Okay,
Yeah,
so based on it's an employer claim.
Yeah. Hanish, you might know better.
Yeah, basically the claim, first of all, you have to make a minimum of 3 weeks claim. And from the recent examples HMRC have kind of published in the last 2-3 days, you can make the claim anytime you want, but it has to be a minimum of 3 weeks claim. So you can keep on making the claim, but minimum of 3 weeks. So you don't have to wait until the month ends. Or you can even make the claim together. I think it's flexible in the way you want to make the claim. However, most people want to make the claim as soon as possible. My suggestion would be that make it every month, because say your payroll is done on a monthly basis, I think it becomes practically more easier and better to do it on a monthly basis. Otherwise, you have an issue about cutoff dates all the time, especially because there's a if you started your follow period, say in the last tax year, which is 1920, and now in 2021, the NI rates, everything is different. So, you know, in terms of calculating that, you also have to be that much careful. So I think it would be practicable just to kind of do it on a monthly basis, then kind of do it on a random basis.
Or just to add to that, Hanish, if the employer is running the payroll on a weekly or 2-weekly cycle or a monthly cycle, the advice would be to stick to what you've been doing.
That's
So
correct.
there may be essential retail shops, like for instance, grocery shops or food, and they pay their staff on a weekly basis, then run it on a weekly basis. But the essential point to remember, to claim the furlough, your employee must have been furloughed for a minimum of 3 weeks. Okay. And it's minimum of 3 weeks. It can be 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And supposing they come back again to do a 1 or 2 weeks work, then you pay them the normal salary for that time. And then you send them on furlough again. So you just have to follow the pattern and claim on what you've been accustomed to in terms of your payroll.
And the crucial thing is to keep records of when you've put your staff on furlough and when they come off.
Just to add on that, in the last, I think it was on Friday, the HMRC have kind of given quite a lot of guidance on this, on to claim. And there's a booklet also they have, it's on the link, I think Sumi, one of your links, maybe a step-by-step guide. So it's worth reading it. It has a lot of detail, and it gives you practical examples of what we're just talking about.
Okay.
The other question is, are employee pay grants taxable when received into the limited company from HMRC?
The employees will be taxed as normal. So if they get this furlough grant from a company, say it's 2,000 or whatever it is, it will be treated as the normal wages, and they would pay tax and NI on it in the normal way.
Can I just add on that? I think there's a confusion here when employees are looking at on their side. The grant is not a grant to them. They are getting normal wages. So their wages will be taxed in the normal way, whether it's 80% of the wages or 100% of the wages. So they will pay the NI, employees NIC in the normal way. This grant is an employer's grant. So the employer is claiming money from the government. It's like a reimbursement or a subsidy for the wages they're paying. So as far as the concerned, it doesn't affect them. As far as the employer is concerned, it's an income which reduces their wage cost. So it is an income to the limited company, which is taxable on the limited company, not on the employee.
I've got a question on WhatsApp. Says along the similar lines, is taxable grants to be subject to VAT if you're self-employed?
That's a good question.
These grants are not VATable, they are not taxable. So there's no VAT element on these grants. So it's a zero rated or exempt, as you might call it, in terms of the monies you receive. So you don't have to account for VAT on it.
Thank you. I'm a bit conscious we're just over 12:30, but I think we've got hopefully time for a couple more questions. If you do want to still submit a question, you can use the Q&A icon on Zoom. If you're logged in, or if you're on our website, you can submit a question from there as well. I have one question from the website. Somebody is running a small medical business, and they're asking whether there's any specific advice or guidance for medical businesses.
Okay, again, if you can ask Hanish.
Right, in terms of medical businesses, depends on what sort of medical business it is. So if it is a pharmacy, running a pharmacy business, a retail pharmacy, the business rates will still apply to it because it is a retail business. In terms of following staff or CJRS, it will still apply to them if the staff are in that kind of position. At the moment, say like pharmacies, they're quite busy. So in terms of following staff, there won't be that much. Now, in terms of deferring the VAT or paying the VAT late, they will still be eligible for that. Now, certain medical sectors is very peculiar, especially to do with dentists. Now, the dentists, as far as the rates are concerned, if you have a dentist business, they're not eligible for these grants. So there'll be dentists, VATs, GP surgeries. They are not eligible for some of these grants, like the business rate grants. For them, it is quite specific. It's a very, very specific area. And again, dentists, you might have an NHS. So you can't follow the staff, or you can follow the staff. And if you're closed, you have to, the employees have to go to the NHS to help them out. It's quite specific in that area. So I think you need to ask your accountant about these issues because it's quite specific.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Got one more from the website. If you follow on staff from 1st April to 31st May, do you claim for both months at the same time or one per month?
Sumi?
I don't know.
I think the simple answer would be you want to claim it as early as practically possible. So if they start from 1st of April, first 3 weeks have to go. I think the requirement is they've been furloughed for 3 weeks. So from a practical point of view, the earliest they can claim is the 21st of April. And the portals are just going live, hopefully this week. So the advice would be to claim for the month of April and then wait until May. Okay, now again, it depends on the run of the payroll. If it's done on a weekly basis, then weekly thereafter, or on a monthly basis, then it may be end of April and end of May. Okay, because you can't claim in advance. So if we haven't yet got through May, and if somebody puts in a claim for 8 weeks, I think they will get rejected because that employee may not be there or business may not be there, etc. So the simple advice is just as soon as practically possible, but a minimum of 3 weeks.
Thank you.
Just to add on that, when you go into the portal, it will ask you the start and finish date of your claim. So you can choose your dates if you want, but practical wise, it might be monthly, might be better. But there's a start and stop date, and then the next claim you start from the start date and another date. So in that way, there's a continuity with your within your portal.
Okay.
Great. Should we just do one more each, maybe from Parashpar and Boni, and then we'll conclude for today. And apologies if we haven't got around to everyone's question, but obviously it's one of those topics where we can have lots and lots of questions going on. So maybe Parashpar, do you want to do one?
Yeah, thanks, Ashish. This is just a clarification from a member who I know works in a bank. He's saying, please clarify that the CBILS loan are only for viable businesses who have the ability to repay the debt and demonstrated a financial track record to that. Many companies that are not viable business are applying. So I think that's an important note, which they need to be ability to repay now for them to be eligible. So the second question is university private accommodation. Any direction on cancellation of final term payment of rent as students aren't using the facilities? Not sure if this is for the panel, but see if we can answer that.
Okay. Well,
shall I take that?
Yeah.
Because I've got a daughter at university, and fortunately, her university has said that look, we will pay back the rent for the final term if you already paid it, or we won't charge it. But I think I was reading an article, I think it may have been on the BBC website, that it really depends on university to university. But my suggestion would be is to lobby the university or the landlords to say that, look, if they're not willing to repay, then it sounds very unfair to the students and their parents, because they're not using those facilities, and they've been advised that the university has closed for the final term. So that would be my personal advice.
Okay, and can we ask Hanish on the bank borrowing? Hanish, the question is, the businesses need to be viable for the loan to be sanctioned. Now, you've had a bit of experience of that.
When the banks are looking at this CBIL, the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan, the short form is CBIL, they actually look at it as if you are applying for any sort of loan. So they will look at the viability of the business. They will ask for projected profits, etc. They will ask you how you're going to repay it back. They'll ask for your assets and liabilities. So it will be like as if you're taking out a normal loan. And based on that, then they will make a judgment whether you'll be able to pay it or not. So that's why many people we have seen are being rejected, because they have said, look, it's not viable. You won't be able to repay the loan. Again, if you already have a commercial loan in your business, the first thing they might look at is whether you can borrow from that loan rather than the CBIL loan. So it will be a case by case in terms of looking at whether you get the loan or not, and whether the business will be viable or not. Because at the end of the day, the loan has to be repaid. Although the government is guaranteeing 80% of the loan, doesn't mean that they won't come after you if you get the loan. First of all, they'll exhaust your security you've given on that loan, and any balance then left over which you can't pay will be then paid by the government. So don't feel that 80% means, the government will pay for the 80%. They'll exhaust the security from you first, and then the balance, whatever is unpaid, from the government. So it's rightfully they have to look at the viability. I think it's common sense for everyone.
Okay, just to add on to that, the statistics I gave, I mean, the package of 330 billion, only $1 billion has been drawn. First of all, what we know, banks are saying we are a business ourselves. We don't want to give loans and find that if business can't pay, we then have to write off 20%. And there is lobbying going on, and I suspect the government will announce they will guarantee 100% in the first year. And as Hanish has alluded, businesses have to be viable. It is only because you've shut down trading for these 2-3 months that you need the help to take your cash flow through. But if your business is unviable to begin with, then the chances of you getting a loan is very slim. Okay.
I think the only other point I would make is there may be some gray areas here where the banks are saying the business is not viable, whereas the entrepreneur or the business are saying, well, it is viable. So, again, I would say, look, talk to your professional advisors and ask them to make the best case possible to the lenders, and try and get that funding in place, because obviously for your business that is very important.
Okay, any further questions?
Hello, there are a few more, but I'm just going to take one more and then I think we will wrap up. So this is about furloughing. It's a very popular area. So can an employer deny to furlough an employee on the basis that they are open and recruiting agency staff to meet demand? And if they furlough regular workers on the basis of living with vulnerable people, would they be penalized by HMRC?
It's a very interesting question. So this is a scenario where employers are recruiting agency staff, but furloughing permanent staff.
Yeah, furloughing regular staff on the basis of living with vulnerable people.
I mean, to some extent, they are protecting their employees by furloughing them, because if they are going to pick up a virus and then take it home, they would be spreading it. But it could also be argued that that staff member, that there's unfairness in the treatment of that staff member, because if that work is available and it's being done by agency staff, why can't this person do it? Two ways of looking at it.
There's no right. See, with the furlough scheme, as we said earlier, this is the first time the British government has ever paid private sector wages. And they've been very generous, up to 80% of 2,500. Okay, so to make some sense of this, if you're an employee and you've been asked to furlough, first of all, you're not being asked to do any work. So it's like a paid holiday. And most employers will pay 80% certainly under the scheme. A lot of employers have gone further to recognize the loyalty of the employees, to say, look, we'll cover 100% of the wages. So it's a generous scheme, and it will depend on each situation. And we would request anybody in this situation, A, to think it through, B, to approach their employer in a fair way, to say, this is the situation, can anything be done about it? And if all fails, then obviously you need to seek professional advice in terms of breach of employment contract and things like that. Now, I'm sure cases will unfold as time goes by, but every business, if you imagine, are trying to survive. There may not be any trade. What do you do with your employees? So there's a lot of things on employers' plates to deal with. It's not just the employees. They may need to deal with the landlord, they need to deal with the suppliers, the bank, the payments, etc. So it's a question of understanding between the employer and the employee. And in your scenario, if the employee is going home and they're vulnerable people, quite rightly, the employer is thinking, well, we don't want to put you at risk, because when you go home, you might pass it on to somebody else. So it's not an unfair scenario.
I think another point I would add is just it's a question of discussions between the employers and the employees. I mean, the employee may want to be furloughed because they've got vulnerable people and they themselves are worried about the people back home. So it may be that it is not an issue. And if the employer says that, look, because we've got work, we'll take on agency staff. And once this pandemic is over, you will come back in. Otherwise they would have let them go. So I think it really revolves around your individual circumstances and having a discussion with the employer.
Okay.
Thank you. I think I'll do one more, and I think we'll have to close then. I've got a question on WhatsApp here. Somebody who is in their first year of being self-employed, so they've not submitted any accounts to date. They run a minicab and they've hired a car, and they were wondering whether there would be any benefits available to them, given that they're in their first year of self-employment.
Okay, Hanish, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, like how I mentioned, if you are newly self-employed, basically you become self-employed during this tax year. So you weren't self-employed during 18-19, then the self-employment income support scheme is not available to you. That's very clear. But like what I said, many people are lobbying about this because there are quite a few in that position and things might change. So it's something to watch out for. But instead of the self-employment income support scheme, the other alternative is for universal tax credits, to have a look whether you can actually benefit out of it. Now you have to go into the website to make sure and fill in the criteria to see whether you're eligible or not. There are quite a few things they will look at it, what sort of other income you have, what sort of savings you have, and then decide on the universal tax credit. But you might have heard tenfold people have gone on universal tax credit, and this is one of the reasons. Many self-employed people haven't been able to get this scheme, and so they're going into the universal tax credit. So that might be a way out. or if you are employed and also self-employed, you can be furloughed from the other side and get some income out of that from that side. So it's unfair to self-employed people, especially the new ones, but there could be some alternatives.
Thank you so much for that. I think we're going to have to close there. Thank you, everybody, because I think we've had questions from the Zoom website, YouTube, WhatsApping. So I'm sorry that we've not been able to cover all the questions. But is there any final thoughts, maybe, Hitesh Bhai, you want to give before I pass it on to Nilesh Bhai?
Yeah, I think we are in extraordinary times as a summary. Nothing like this has happened for a long, long time. I think there was Spanish flu 100 years ago, and this pandemic is world over. So every country has been affected, and every country has decided what they will do for their nationals. Now, the UK government, I think, has gone a long way in trying to sort out people who are vulnerable and people who are going to find it very hard to survive this lockdown period and whenever we come out of it. And they've announced numerous measures as well as loans. Now, the idea is to make sure that nobody goes hungry and there is some support. So in the last question, if you're self-employed and you fall outside, then you can try the universal credit system. So there will be support somewhere along the line. And there are a lot of charities as well trying to operate and help, like our own Oshwal charity. It's trying to do what it can. The key message really from us, from Flemings, is that be safe. This is not a time to take undue risk. This virus is lethal and you don't know who's carrying it. So if you're an employer, take into account the compassionate view the employees find themselves in. And if you're an employee, think about the business, will it survive? And as Sailesh has said, Hanish and Sumi, it's a question of having a sensible discussion. And once that discussion takes place, I'm sure there will be a solution. And there are a lot of advisors around willing to give 15, 20-minute free advice in terms of helping point everybody in the right direction. And after this Q&A slide, Sumi has put some useful web links. And there is a lot of information now out in the domain. HMRC have carried very, very useful information. ICAW, again, you can log on to their website. They've given detailed briefs. So there is a lot of information. And ACAS, again, if you fall into that difficult situation, they may be able to advise. So there's no reason for anybody to feel disillusioned. I'm sure we'll come out of this positively. And life has changed forever in the way we do things. I think we have to accept that. But I hope today, by us joining the webinar for the community, it has given some pointers to what can and cannot be done, and what is the ethos and what we should be doing. So I trust those people who have joined us, it has been helpful to them. Sailesh, you want to add anything else?
No, nothing else except to thank the Oshwal Association for giving us the opportunity to put our views forward and our ideas forward to the community at large. And as Hitesh has said, that look, you know, there are people within the community who will be willing to help out to point you in the right direction. And I'm sure in this current crisis, you know, most people would be sensible, whether it's having a discussion between the employer and the employees or whoever, you know, I'm sure people will understand and will bend over backwards to make sure that people are not left out on a limb. So thank you again for allowing us this opportunity.
No, thank you all. It's been very informative and getting very positive responses back from YouTube, Facebook, and WhatsApp. So it's very good. Can I request Nilesh Bhai to say a few closing remarks?
Hi. Jai back again. I think the topic was very informative by the panelists, Hitesh Pai, Sumitra Ben, Shailesh Pai, and Hanish Pai. I'm sure a lot of you would have taken the thoughts, the advice, the suggestions, and the guidance which has just been given. And obviously, this webinar will be on our website. So those people who have missed out, hopefully, will be able to see it. So pass these messages to your friends and relatives if they haven't seen it yet. And hopefully, this will be very useful to them as well. And also like to thank Paresh Pai for being on the panelist as well. And also my thanks to Ashish Pai and Bounty Ben for bringing this live broadcast for all of us. And I think it has been very, very useful to many of you today. And hopefully you'll put into practice, seek your professional advice from your accountants or your professional advisors, and hope this will be more beneficial in coming months for you to come out of this situation. Yes, it has been one of things this has happened. It's never been experienced in the past. And let's hope be positive and let's come out of it hopefully very shortly with a positive note. So thank you all for listening, and let's some more webinars like this will come forward and will be on our website as we go along. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nilesh Bhai, and thank you all for joining. People have joined on Zoom, they've joined through YouTube, they've looked at our website, they've been messaging us on WhatsApp, so everybody's been joining us, so thank you so much for this. I think afterwards, if you've obviously missed it or want to refer back to it, there will be a recording of this, and I think the slides which have been put together, we'll put a copy on that on the Osho website for reference. Just obviously a quick reminder that the information presented today was guidance and correct as at today. With obviously coronavirus and everything which is going on, the guidance can change, government policies can change, so just keep an eye out constantly for how things evolve. But just a final thank you to Paresh Bhai and Bhavani also for trying to facilitate all the Q&As in the background. Huge thank you to Hitesh Bhai, Sumi Ben, Shailesh Bhai, and Hanish Bhai as well for your valuable inputs. And also for Nilesh Bhai for joining. Well, I think Nilesh Bhai, you've joined almost every single online webinar, so well done for doing that as well. So I'm just going to close it there. Thank you, everyone. And as always, take care of yourselves and stay safe, particularly in line with all the coronavirus requirements for social distancing. Take care, everyone.